Hello, friends, and welcome back to the fifth session that I'll be doing with my buddy Tom Schnitzius. We've had four very extensive and very enlightening sessions so far, and where we left off is with a revelation to a lot of people that I talk to, and that is that we individually and the energy we reflect and the consciousness we reflect and emanate from who we are affects the world. And it affects not only how we live and therefore how we perceive and see and do life, but it projects out and affects those around us in our immediate surround, and then it projects even farther and even farther, etc., in terms of penetrating this whole universe of field of energy that we exist in. So the more we can raise those internal energies for ourselves, the more we can elevate our consciousness, the bigger the impact we can have on the world. Whoa. So, Tomei,
Hey,
welcome back. And
thanks.
yeah, pick it up from there, please.
That was a pretty big introduction right there. Um, yeah, to bring it down a little bit, and to just kind of dissect it a little bit, to understand that, your own personal opportunities of growth and coherence within yourself is where we begin in most cases, which means we've talked in the past on some of these other podcasts about the beginning stages of recognizing the choices that you've been making in your life, producing certain ways of being in the world, if you will, and in some cases unconsciously. Some of the choices we make seem to be unconscious choices, and then some tend to be conscious choices. And what we've discussed in the past is we really want to do the best we can to listen to our intuition and our heart to be able to produce the consciousness energetic levels that we wish to really be with and to project into ourselves, into the world, into our communities, and so on. And so to begin with, that's where we start. We start with understanding, again, the life strategies. Um, and it does filter out into many different opportunities. And one of the things that we were going to discuss at some point were some of the, um, let's call them mystery schools that you've heard me use that phrase before. So we can talk about a little bit about, well, what does that mean? Mystics and mystery schools and
Yeah,
modalities and
let's
so on.
let's let's demystify
Yeah,
the,
let's
the
demystify it.
mystery
Yeah,
schools.
yeah. So it's not a mystery anymore.
Yeah.
Um, Back in the day, and I mean back in the day, we're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, there were schools set up kind of under the radar to assist people to use energy in such a way that creates an abundance of beauty and love and connection around them. But it would take a special individual. So there were masters back in the day that ran these schools. You might remember the name Pythagoras, or you might remember the name Socrates, or even before that, we had, excuse me, cultures and sects like the Essenes, who were in northern Africa, had the Ethiopians, which were around Africa, and that goes before the Essenes. And the Essenes then were a group of people who believed in the ability to use energies in such a way to create a beautiful feeling of energy and connection with all things, to find that unification field, if you will, the unity of all particles, and what science is now shown as possible. But back in the day, they already knew this. They already knew that everything around them was energies and vibrations, and that there was something that was holding those things together, which they would call source or God. That was when God was used more than anything else. But now we know that that consciousness is a field, and it's an intelligent field, it seems, because there seems to be a growth that continues on. So there seems to be some kind of intelligence there. And we might even call it a divine intelligence, an intelligence that is just feeding this constantly, this constant growth. And not to go too far and deeply into this yet, the indigenous cultures around the world also had schools. So it wasn't just, let's say, the eastern parts of the world. The western parts had it too, albeit now that's been taken away. But some of the indigenous cultures here, even in America, are still practicing their modalities and their understandings of how nature and the universe and energies work to the best of all. And when we came over and started forcing them to believe some of the religions and so on that we thought were proper, we tried to take away their abilities and their it's called mystery school ideologies of how they operate. And so now we don't have as much of that available to us, even though it is available to us, but we've been kind of programmed to believe that that's not true. You can go into the Mayan cultures, into South America, Inca cultures. You can go into Mexico with the Mayan cultures. You can even go into Eskimos and some of the cultures in northern North America, even over into Western Europe, of course, and China. And so these mystery schools were everywhere. They weren't just in supposedly Egypt or in India, in the hills of Nepal and so on. They actually were everywhere, and a lot of them were practicing the same understandings of how things come together and how energies work and so on. They might have called them something different, but if you were to study some of them like I have, you'd find out that, yeah, the names are different, but the understandings behind the names are identical. And so, that being said, a lot of the principles that they followed, there were many in some cultures. Some of the cultures and some of the cults and sects followed, say, 8 different aspects of growth, and some would follow 4, and some would follow 6, some would follow 3. And what I mean by that is there were specific aspects of your journey that became an everyday type of routine, let's call it. And what I found in my studies, and I'm going to pass that on to you right now, and if some of you have a piece of paper and a pen, you might want to write this down. Of course, you could listen to this again, I guess, as many times as you want. But it's kind of important to remember these 4 principles, because what I found in studying all these different cultures in mystical schools was there seemed to be always 4 aspects of growth that would show up. Those 4 aspects of growth are covered by one that is the most important. Without this first one, the other 3 cannot be accomplished. The first aspect of growth is awareness. Without awareness, you can't go any further, which means you have to come out of your shell. That means you have to come out of your program or your life strategy or the way you define life for yourself. You must open yourself up to a new understanding and not even know what that might be. Because through awareness, you're going to be surprised, shocked at, if you truly are aware, how many different opportunities of choice you're going to have. You would always think I only had 1 or 2. But when you become aware, all of a sudden, I'm going to use a really big word here, there's a plethora of opportunities that you never saw possible. And the only way that's possible is through awareness. So the awareness principle in growth is the number 1 piece. That piece you will use for the rest of your journey until you pass away. And so as we move on to the next aspect, without awareness, we don't even know the choices that are available to us. So the second aspect of growth is choice. And that has a lot of different avenues as well. Um, I can get into the different avenues of awareness, but I'd rather share with you today just the four aspects so you can get an understanding of how some of these mystery schools would operate. So Master would talk to you first about awareness and do the best he or she could to get you involved with the feeling and the sensation, using all your senses to become aware, even your sixth sense, your sense of feeling something around you that you can't put your finger on or that you can't define, your ability to hear, your ability to see, your ability to see with your third eye. And we'll probably get into that at some point. Your ability to feel with all your vortexes and your chakras. That's all in awareness. And so you could see there could be months and months of study in trying to zero in on that and first letting go of the things that you defined in your life that stopped you from having the awareness. That has to be let go of first. And then the awareness coming in from there, it's kind of like relearning your ability to be able to sense and feel things around you. And
Let me ask a quick question. When
sure,
you
go for
say,
it.
yeah, when you say field of study, you really mean it sounds to me like this is field of practice where you are practicing and practicing and practicing, opening up that sensitivity and perceiving
Yeah,
more rather than simply studying how
yeah,
it works.
yeah. You're becoming aware, and you're becoming aware in a way that you haven't ever become aware before because you were shut down into believing in some way that the only thing to do is just become aware of what's in front of you, and that's it. In a third dimensional sense, kind of like what's bad or what's good in the duality of things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
that's an
Thank you.
awareness. I'm not going to take that away from it. Only that's a very limited awareness, very limited awareness. There's so much more in experiencing what's going on in any each moment that we are a part of. Um, from looking at the screen that I'm on right now, you can, instead of being aware of me just talking to you, which you're zeroed in on, look behind me, look at the shelves, look what's on the shelves, look at the pictures, look at the sun coming in from the window. You can see all these things that all of a sudden, now that I'm pointing them out to you, you're becoming aware of. And you might say, well, we really like the shirt that Tomei has on, but some people like that looks horrible. Why did you wear a shirt like that today? Um, so you become aware of all kinds of things that you weren't aware of because you were kind of zeroed in and listening to me into the words that I'm speaking to you. That's a limited awareness, by the way. So if I can listen to Tomei speak to me, but at the same time envelop myself into the situation as well, that's an expanded awareness, you might say. So the masters at the mystery schools would spend a lot of time with each soul, each person that would show up, and trying to help them develop this sense of awareness first. Because without awareness, the other three aspects really wouldn't come into play. So if you guys, anybody out there has any questions about this, um, we could suggest books you could go to. There's many YouTubes on awareness. There's opportunities to uh, give me a call, or I know Bill on his website will have my email address on there, and we can go from that. But to understand just a quick view of what awareness is, it's really, really important. I can't stress it more that this is a huge aspect of the growth of the heart and the growth of each one of us spiritually, to be able to connect with our higher selves and in the present moment with our heart as well. So, moving to the next aspect after awareness, with that awareness, then, with any given opportunity that's in front of us, be it a choice that we have to make that could be within us, a choice that could be made without us, which means, do I remain silent in the situation? Do I speak in the situation? Do I act in the situation? And in any one of those, say, situations, as far as within, act or speak, there's choices within those. How would you speak? How would you act? How would you be silent? Those are all part of choice. And so with awareness, I become aware, first of all, that there are many choices I can make in that situation. And it's not good enough to just say, yeah, I've got many choices. It's not good enough. You got to make one. um, and that's how we grow. And what we're trying to do and become aware of in the choices that we have available, are any of them feeling the same as choices we made through our program or life strategy or definition of life? Is it similar to that? Or am I finding making different choices that I can experience to see if they might say they work better, they feel better, the situation, the outcome, and ended up to be a more fluid. It might end up to be the worst thing you ever made, and that's okay, because we are we're trying to do the best we can to experience all things. Um, excuse me. I want to get back to that, Bill, talking about experiencing all things. It's a really important point.
Okay, let me, if I may, just
Yeah,
jump in here with an observation about somebody whose work I know you really respect a lot, and I do too, and that's Dr. Bruce Lipton,
yeah,
and I won't explain the whole thing, but he basically is arguing that 95% of the time we are acting out of habit,
yes,
okay,
right,
not out
yeah,
of choice.
correct.
And he said, if we had to choose everything, like I think I better breathe this time or this second,
Yeah,
our lives wouldn't work. Okay, so there's a certain amount of this that happens just automatically, that we walk up to a door and we know we need to turn a handle rather than bang up against the door. But
right.
there are numerous things where we could be choosing how to act or respond rather than just doing it habitually.
Just responded. Yeah,
And it's
and
it's
that
the
and
habitually that I think is the pattern that you're talking
right.
about, the life
Yeah,
pattern.
that's the
Yeah.
program. That's the learned way of being with life and looking at life. We seem to think that with the choice we're making to eat the certain foods we eat, I'm sorry, or even make, for instance, our choices we're making, and yet it's just a habitual way of making the same thing over and over again instead of enjoying different tastes and different ways of getting our taste buds to enjoy something we've never had before. Well, it's like if you like something so much because that's what you grew up on, then that's what you eat all the time. You're thinking, well, that's still a choice. I guess it is, but it's more of a training. It's more of a program of not allowing yourself to grow and open yourself up to new things. And so we'd have to make new choices. And when we do what Bill has just explained, and the patterning that he's talking about, what that does to ourselves is it tells ourselves this is the way we're going to react. This is the way we're going to be in situations. This is the way we always are going to choose. And we are actually telling ourselves how to be in the situations, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Bruce Lipton, I believe, called it epigenetics. That's what he called it. And he studied the cells inherently to see what is going on when he would shift a choice energetically. How would the cell adapt to it? What would happen? And it would. And that's what's interesting about this whole thing, is that what that shows us is that we have control over our complete body. So our mental, our physical, emotional, and spiritual body, we are in control. Not what's outside of us, not what we're told what to do, not the brain, but our intent. So our intent is a feeling experience. Our intent isn't necessarily a mind-driven thing. The mind uses it eventually, but when the heart is involved, it's a sensation and a feeling that's happening, and sends it to the brain to say, this is what will be best for all, for me and for the best of all. So yeah, Bruce Lipton came in with some incredible studies scientifically to show us how this actually works, and verified that these things worked back in the day in the mystery schools, because the mystery schools were teaching these very things, these understandings of how you can shift your body, you can heal your body, you can allow yourself to manifest and create things um, through your cells and through your projection of energy by deepening your connection to all things. And to be able to do that, we have to let go of the program that they came up with as well. Even the Essenes back in the day, we're talking 10,000 years or more ago, they actually talked about that by the time the child is 7 years old, it's already been pre-programmed. Back then, they were talking about this. And so now we understand this really innately and are trying to assist others to look at themselves and see if they are allowing themselves to be controlled in some aspect by a program or a training or a life strategy that was developed before they were 7 years old. And in most cases, there's truth to that. So again, going back into the four principles, we have awareness, which is the key to all of these. The second one is choice. Through awareness, we become aware of the fact that we have many choices we can make. And so then we have to make a choice. You can't just sit there and say, okay, well, yeah, I got many choices. And so then what are you going to do? What are you going to just be with it? You're going to understand it? That's a choice in itself. You got to make a choice if you're going to grow and you're going to experience things through your heart. So you make a choice. Again, it's not good enough to just make a choice, because now once you make a choice, one has to experience the choice they just made. So the third principle was feeling and experiencing the choice that you just made. Without awareness, you cannot feel and you cannot experience. So awareness then becomes a key. That means you have to become aware of the choice you just made based upon how does it feel to you? What's it look like? What are some of the outcomes from it? Would you make the same choice again? Would you make a different choice that's similar to it? Kind of refine the choice? So there's all these different experiences that can come with making just one choice. Once you make that choice, once you feel and experience that choice, the final principle is what we kind of use today is letting go. And some of the mystery schools would say, once you've made that choice and you felt and experienced it, then the energies, the vibrations would die down. They would kind of just go away. So nowadays we're calling it letting go. And it's a natural process of letting go. It's not like you're in a bad relationship and your friends are saying, just let it go. You don't need to be with it, and you're like, I'm attached to it. We're talking about let it go. How do I let it go? And so it's not anything like that at all. What it is that as soon as you become aware that the choice is over, the experience is over, the next opportunity that you're going to have is a new experience. Something else is going to come in. It's going to be a challenge that's going to push you to make a new choice. As soon as you start allowing yourself through awareness to look at something, a new situation or a new choice, you've already let the old one go. Now you're focused on the new thing that you have. So it's kind of like the energy just kind of goes away and you open yourself up to a new opportunity. So those four principles seem to be located in every single culture, every single mystery school from the past. And so those four principles we can use on a daily basis, but we use them in conscious. So we're conscious, we're aware, we're using them from that perspective instead of letting ourselves go and not becoming aware of what's going on around us. That's a lot. Those four principles are a lot, but it's something you can do on a daily basis.
Well, it's a lot, but it's so foundational.
Yeah.
I mean, and it is so fundamentally basic, because it means, to me, oversimplifying it, it's about paying attention in your life, paying attention to every decision, to every action in terms of how is it serving, and then you finish the sentence with that, the greater good, or
Yeah.
my selfish needs, or
Right.
creating more chaos in the world, or, bringing harmony to a situation. I mean, it puts us in a kind of perceiving, diagnostic, attention paying mode. Okay.
Yeah, and you want to be careful with that because we don't want to go into a thinking mode with this. What the schools would teach over and over and over again is to allow yourself to get out of your mind but into your heart. So everything was based upon sensory and feeling and experiential. It wasn't about thinking. The mind came in eventually to do the best it could to define what we're experiencing, to put some words to what is going on. But in all relation to the journey itself, the sooner I can get to my intuitive abilities and my way of feeling and sensing what's going on around me, that's the awareness. The awareness is not thinking. The awareness is the ability to feel and sense and experience. Then I can bring my heart into the situation. And that's a whole different, how would I say, journey in itself. Because a lot of the work has to first be developed in doing the best we can to understand how I do think. Where does my mind come in? Why does my mind come in so much? Why am I defining everything that I'm doing? What is causing all that to happen? And so I have to relook at myself and go into some of the past because I have to understand for myself how this all developed and how the mind took control as opposed to allowing my heart to listen. And I think all the audience out here, I know all of you have had those moments where you've had an intuitive thought. And if the intuitive thought is coming from the heart, it's not from the mind. It's a feeling, a sensation. There's like almost a voice to it that comes in real quickly and says, "Oh, go do this." And you then go into the story of how it's going to develop. As soon as you create a story, you're in the mind, and the heart now is not available. The heart doesn't care about the story. The heart is more interested in the experience of what's going on. And so we'll get into that in some other podcasts, but we've got to be really careful here to understand that we don't want to be thinking about all these things. You don't want to think about the four aspects. It's almost like you want to write down the four aspects and be with yourself and say, am I aware? Am I an aware human being? What does that mean to me in my heart? Not what does it mean to me in definition? Am I aware of what's going on around me? Am I aware of how people feel in my household? Am I truly aware of that? Am I truly aware of what it feels like when I'm cold, when I'm hot? Am I aware of how the sun is today? Am I aware of how the light changes from moment to moment? Am I aware of, any number of things, smells and tastes and sounds and so on that I can define, but awareness isn't about definition. Awareness is being with something. To be with something, I must connect with it. To be able to connect with it, I must feel it because it's vibration and it's energy. Your mind cannot connect. Your mind cannot feel. Your mind and your brain is used to define things for you. It helps you make decisions based on definition, but the heart tells it what it wants it to do. And then it tries to put it together with the heart to define how do we go forward. So say you're injured, say you hurt your leg, and you go in for surgery and you come out, and you go to PT, and the PT is trying to help you reconnect the nervous system and the muscles and everything that's going on. And it's not through a thinking process to do that. You have to start bending your knee. And anybody that's had to do that out there knows it hurts like you wouldn't believe. You're not thinking that. You are experiencing that. So you're experiencing the pain. Go ahead and try and put a definition to that. It's almost impossible to define what that pain is all about. You can go into particulars where the pain is happening because this neuron and this muscle and that, whatever is turning and going at the wrong time because it just got repaired. And so, okay, that's science, and it's going to define for you how it all works. But you cannot define the pain. The pain is felt, it's experienced. So, what I'm suggesting to you is that your awareness must come to that. Your awareness has to be with, your awareness must incorporate the being with the experiential part of what's going on around you and inside of you. How's it affecting you? Are you getting emotional? Is your body tense? What's it feel like? How do you breathe? What's going on in your awareness, instead of saying, well, I'm really angry at that. Okay, so you're really angry at that. Great, you just defined it, but what does that mean? What's anger feel like to you? Is anger in your head? You get a headache from it? Is your neck really stiff? Are you breathing really hard and fast? Are you ready to fight? What does anger mean? From an experiential point, not from a definition. This is what awareness is all about. So as any of you can start getting the idea of here, it's not anything here. It's not anything in your mind. It's all here in your heart. And so the sooner we can become aware through our hearts, now we're on our way, because now we can invite into any moment, any present moment that we come into, we can invite our heart into it and know that we're feeling it and we're sensing it, because it's hard to define. Our story, our ego, our mind is going to come in there and it's going to do everything it can to interrupt that. It wants you always to go back to your program. So it's going to do everything it can to put words to it that'll get you caught up back in your program again. So the awareness can be very static. It can be very limited if it's from the mind and only used in a defined way. But when we introduce awareness as a feeling experience, wow, things really shift. And in any of my workshops and classes and stuff, when I've done some exercises with everybody in there to help them get the feeling of the difference between the two, it really goes a long way later, because then they can take it home with them and they can start, is like Bill was saying, not necessarily study it, but to actually bring it into their life so they can see how it works for them. Because everybody, again, is unique. We've talked about that before. So everybody has a different way of experiencing any given situation because of the past and because of how they see life and so on and so forth. So awareness is the key to this whole thing. And it leads us to the other three aspects. So if you've written those down and you get an idea of those, I challenge you. I challenge you right now to use them in your life and see what happens. Start off with the awareness and see where it goes from there.
Tomei, I'm getting the impression here of something that our spirit partner Al Rowe said in his opening presentation about coming into the silence and coming into presence and slowing everything down. And so here's where I want to close the loop, to the point where you can choose. Because if you're just constantly in sort of frenetic action mode, all right, there is no awareness that comes to you other than reactive, okay, kinds of awareness. That you've got to be able to slow the perceptual system down in order to let the sensing happen, etc. Otherwise, all the frenetic stuff overrides it.
It can, but once we do this work, that part of what L is talking about will automatically become you. So it's what they say, if you ever heard this line before, it's standing in the fire without getting burned. So as you're standing in the chaos and you see chaos all around you, you can become aware of the chaos and feel the energy of the chaos and see some of the choices you have with the chaos, and then experience those choices without being chaotic. And what that means is that you can be in your heart experiencing these things without allowing the energies that are at play to overcome you. And so, as we develop our mastership, that's a big word I just threw out there, I know. As we develop our mastership and be with things that come along the way, what ends up happening is that in being with things and not judging them, but just being with them, then we can be with things in a way, no matter how would I say, how energetic they might be, how difficult they might be, how chaotic they might be, how soft they might be, how hard they might be. Any challenge that seems to come along the way, we can just be with it to help us understand the experience that's in front of us. And that comes also from like what your buddy else talking about, where you've developed a inner peace within yourself. You've developed an inner neutrality, let's call it, or an inner balance, where you are not allowing anything to trigger you anymore. And that's a huge word, trigger. To understand that we all have in bed triggers within our system that we have developed based upon our experiences of the past. And if somebody during our journey all of a sudden says certain words to us, it could trigger a response within us that we do not have control of. Because when we hear those words, we automatically feel like they hate us. And that's not what they're saying. But because we've heard it over and over and over again, say from a parent or a brother or a sister or a grandparent or from a teacher at class or whatever it might be, it's been ingrained in us to believe when those words are being said that somebody is hating you. And so those triggers are deep inside of us. And that's some of the work that we're going to become aware of. We're going to become aware of the choices we have with it. We're going to have an opportunity to feel and experience that trigger once again. And then we're going to have the opportunity to let that trigger go so it's not with you anymore. Interesting, isn't it? That we can use those 4 principles at the same time and use them in a way to heal ourselves from some of the things that are holding us back. So in some respects, you're right, Bill. Sometimes you do have to slow some things down, but it isn't a, how would I say it, a must be or something. Once you understand that the way you can be with something is through your heart will naturally do it for you. At least this is what I found in my journey. The mystery schools would teach this as well, as far as creating situations to cause chaos for you to see how you would react, and you wouldn't know it was coming. So these guys would make up stories and make up situations to see if it would push your buttons, because they knew your background, to show you how you can be with something in a different way than the way you were. And we can teach that to ourselves. It's not impossible. So presence, being in the moment, silence, they're all great tools without question. They're all beautiful tools for us, and they are waiting inside your heart to be explored because you already have them. It's to open yourself up to them. And so, for instance, if you and me get in an argument and I get triggered and I walk away in anger, and later on I come to myself and realize in my heart that there was no place for anger in that moment, that we weren't actually fighting with each other. We were just debating, maybe at a high level of energy, but we were just debating. Well, that same feeling of energy is what I felt when I was being torn apart and came home from school every day as my dad told me I was worthless. And so it just kept building up and building up. And I had to recognize as I walked away from Bill that at some place, at some moment, I had to realize for myself that I was triggering myself. He was triggering me, but I was allowing that to trigger the trigger, if you might say. I was choosing to believe that that trigger was more powerful than the silence that I had inside myself. So I would have to be with that trigger I have to recognize how it affects me. I would have to go into, say, a silence of being with the energies that were there so I could truly feel them and be able to let them go. So that's feeling, experiencing, then letting go. And then finally come back to Bill and apologize that I was triggered by what he had said. And he would be shocked. He'd be surprised, says, well, that's not what I meant. And I would say, I know, but that's how I took it. And so I'm taking responsibility for the way I was in that moment. That takes a lot of courage, humility, and integrity within yourself to take that upon yourself instead of always pointing the finger outside of yourself. So there's just another example of how this works as we go forward.
Let me bring this segment to a close with, maybe it's a loaded a loaded
They're all
question.
loaded questions.
Yeah, they're all loaded. I've been practicing my loaded questions.
I can tell. You're
Yeah,
triggering me. You're
there
triggering
we go. I have a loaded question about something that could take us into a totally different next episode. Okay.
Okay. Yep.
Because according to the New Testament Bible, we don't know anything about Jesus's life for
Ah,
about 18 years between the time he was in the
yeah,
temple with the priests until suddenly he's out there doing his work.
correct.
Um, there are other informed sources, et cetera, that say he was in
Mhm.
fact in Egypt and other places
Yeah.
doing mystery school work during all that time, which gave him the
Yes.
capacities, et cetera, et cetera. Do you want to
Yes.
comment on that, please, just a little bit?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And there's a lot of backup information if anybody wants to dive into this, um, in books and so on, and researchers. During those periods of time, first of all, Yeshua and his family were born into the Essene community. So he was already a part of that community. And so you might say he was already in the mystery schools, but because he was such a huge, what I said, his energy was so incredibly intense, being born the way he was, that he already understood many, many, many of the um, processes and aspects of the way, is what it's called in the Essene community. The way is the journey within. And many, many of his followers came from that school. Um, they were first destroyed, by the way, after he uh, died on the cross and resurrected. So um, many of the Essenes were then killed, and the community was destroyed. But they left behind a lot of scrolls, as we know by the Nag Hammadi situation. We have a lot of scrolls, and some of those things. Some of you out there might want to look up um, a name. Sekley is his name. I think it's Sekley possibly, but and I can't remember his first name. But he was able to go into the Vatican, believe it or not, back in 1943 when all these scrolls were found. They put him in the Vatican in the basement. Of course, they didn't want anybody to see him. So he was able to get into the Vatican. He was able to get in there and read these scrolls, and he transcribed them into books. And he wasn't supposed to do that, but he did it anyway. And so you can actually find them. I've tried to get some more of them, and they're not being published right now, so it might be difficult to find them. But there's incredible amount of information from him about the Essene community and where Yeshua came from, and where he traveled and so on. And so he was actually in Egypt studying quite a bit. He was also studying in the mystery schools in Egypt, the temples, Luxor and the Temple of Isis and so on. Many of those temples, which were considered pagan, but they were energy schools. They were mystery schools teaching them the various aspects of how to use energies in a way that were the best for all. So that means in a very humble and heartfelt way, which was always the teaching way. He also went to Nepal if you will. I don't know if it was called Nepal at that time, but in Tibet, and studied in some of the mystery schools there, and India as well. Learned a lot about the energies from that modality. And when he came back, he had all that information with him before he went on his mission. Once he was in the, you hear about him being in the desert for a number of years and so on. He went into the desert and finally found the relationship with consciousness and nature. And what he saw, of course, was what a lot of us are now beginning to see, and that was the particles and the vibrations and so on that actually are in everything, in rocks and stones and sand and trees and the air and everywhere, that everything has a unification principle to it. Everything is connected. Everything is vibration and color and vibrate and frequency and color and so on. And he saw that in the desert. And then came back and started his mission, and he had to clear out his ego, just like all of us did. He'd be the first one to tell you that he's a human being too. And because he was a human being, he did develop a lot of nasty programming in his youth. He would argue with the Pharisees and the leaders and the rabbis, telling them they were wrong, and he did it in a more argumentative way, let's just say, until he finally came out of the desert to recognize that he could speak from his heart with vibration as opposed to his head with vibration. So there's a lot of books out there from that perspective telling you the history. You can also read some of the gospels that were found in the tablets as well, that they're finally, some of them have been published. So the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene is really profound. And she's talking about what Yeshua taught her about everything's illusion in our world, believe it or not. Mystery schools tell you that this is an illusionary world, and that once you understand the basic principles of all that in an esoteric way and scientific way, then you can be with this world differently than letting the world tell you how to be. And so you've heard me talk about that already as well. All I'm passing on to you, besides what Bill asked me to do just now, basically is everything Yeshua learned in his lifetime. I would say to you, this is going to maybe get a few people upset, maybe. I don't know if it will or not, but when Yeshua died on the cross, he basically said that they're not killing me, I'm killing myself. Those are some of the words that he used back in the day that have been registered on these pamphlets, these scrolls. And basically what that means is that he was trying to show us that for you to rebirth, you must die unto yourself. To be able to die unto yourself is not to kill yourself. To die unto yourself is to die into the definition of who you think you are. Who you think you are has been programmed into you. Who you think you are is the definition of the life strategy you've developed. Who you think you are is what society tells you you are. Who you think you are is what religion tells you you are. You're a sinner. Who you think you are is what the government says you are. Who you think you are is constantly, that phrase is being bombarded upon you day in and day out by the media, by everything around you. And it's up to you to turn it off. And I mean, turn off all the words that are coming at you as well. And go within yourself and recognize the divine intelligence that you really are. And once we do that, once we understand the truth of that, then we die into ourselves and rebirth into our hearts, and we rebirth into a higher frequency. It doesn't mean we leave that part of ourselves behind that died. That doesn't mean that we don't remember where we came from. It doesn't mean that we still don't have the opportunity for possibly our ego to come back and to cause trouble once again. But what it does do is it detaches us from it. We don't have the emotional attachment to it anymore. It doesn't drive us anymore. He did it, Yeshua did it in a way that was incredibly demonstrative, of course. He actually crawled up on there and died on the cross. He died unto himself. According to the Essene scrolls, he didn't really die. And I know some people out there are going to go, this is absolutely crazy.
Tomei, I'd like to offer a couple of books for people to look at.
Sure, that'd be great.
In addition to what you just said, and add one more thing about the Essenes.
Okay.
There's a contemporary American woman who has passed just a few years ago named Dolores Cannon.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
she wrote a book, a paperback. It's called Jesus and the Essenes.
Yeah.
And I strongly, strongly, strongly recommend that you read that book because it will blow some of the great myths that we hear
Yeah.
about all the time out of the water. Okay.
There's another book called also Anna, the grandmother of Jesus.
Yes, which is a channeled book.
Which is a channeled book. And so once you go into that, it's a follow-up almost to the Jesus and the Essenes book, because it tells you the history also, which is verified in the channeled book as well. So as you continue to research these things for yourself, you might notice that there's a lot of verification from very different places that will tell you a lot of the same things to help you to understand that this stuff actually is real. And it doesn't mean that we should get upset by what history has told us that's wrong. I'm going to suggest to you to use this in a way to help uplift your heart, to know that there's a different way, it's called the way, to follow your heart and to follow your inward journey. And that many masters have done it beforehand. There's always been those out there that would do the best they could to assist us and teach us in a direct way, but an intimate way from one to another, not in a group setting of how to do this for yourself. And search them out and you'll find them. If your heart is looking, your heart will find it for you. And that's really important to
Yes,
realize.
thank you. Let me just add one more thing. In
Yeah.
the the Nag Hammadi books that you mentioned, okay,
Yeah.
Thomas and the others, okay, that
Yeah.
was a community it's down near the sacred temple of Abydos in Egypt.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes, it is.
The
Yeah.
Dead Sea Scrolls, which contain other things, were, they believe, and I'm sure it's true, created by the Essene community
Yes.
that was, yes, that was in Qumran in
Qumran. Yeah.
what's now Israel, okay,
Yeah.
which is this community down by the Dead Sea. And
Right.
that's where these big cliffs are where that have the caves, and that's where they found in all those jars a really different set of scrolls.
Yeah. Correct.
So
Yep.
yes, the head of the Qumran community at one point in its history was James, the brother of Jesus.
Right.
So that's why many scholars believe that Jesus, I mean, apart from what you know and what's in these other books, that connection itself is why they believe that Jesus also must have been an Essene because
Yes.
his mother was an Essene and her mother was an Essene, et cetera, et cetera.
Correct. Correct.
So,
And
yeah, there are lots of things that are not revealed in our holy scriptures that are that are incredibly more informative, et cetera. And it's really worth pursuing some of these other sources
yeah.
to get a bigger, grander picture of how all of this played out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot out there. But again, when Bill and I talked about this before we came on today, what I always come back to is the most important piece of all of this, no matter what, is your heart. The most important piece is you to find yourself through your heart. because through your heart, you're able to be with others in a way that is far deeper and far understanding and more compassionate and more in gratitude than your mind. And if all of us can start coming through our hearts, we will establish a new earth, which is starting to happen, which I think we'll have a subject for at another time too. That we can all be together and live in something that's called a pure duality as opposed to a judgment duality, which is what we're living in right now. And so the work that we have to do is to work through the heart. Again, we've kind of given a nod to Heart Math Institute. I do again, because the work they're doing is phenomenal, and it's helping us understand some of the energies and the vibrations and the energetic field that we have from our heart space that goes out. They say now it just keeps going out into the universe, believe it or not. So whatever we project out from our hearts is going everywhere. So there's actually scientific proof of that. So if we can understand that and start living more from a place of non-judgment, we will create a wonderful place for us to live. So I truly believe that. And it's up to each one of us.
Well, thank you again. Another profoundly illuminating session. Thank you. And
You're welcome.
let me say, I sensed about a couple of minutes ago a segue to our next session.
You think?
No. So for your viewing benefit, let me suggest that next time we just might want to tackle that issue of who are you? Okay,
Yeah.
what is your identity? How does it form? What other possibilities are there about that identity, etc.? And that can get us into quite an interesting discussion, but I think it's inevitable because when you begin to do this work, as the layers of density and distortion peel away, you begin again and again and again to say, well, who am I? I mean, what am I here really if I'm not all this programmed stuff and if I'm not all these other things?
Yeah.
So I think that's a great topic.
And it's a great place to go too, because a lot of people, their first question is to themselves is, what's my purpose here? And we can get into that and to try and dissect, is there actually a purpose, or is that something the mind wants to create as well? So,
okay.
All right.
Thank you. Thanks for being with us.
You're welcome as always. I always have fun with you, Bill.
I'm a fun guy.
That's right.
All
right.
Yeah, well, so see you next time. Guaranteed it's going to be a very illuminating discussion. Thanks.